All right. Home stretch. So after 2.5 days of connecting dots, we found more dots that need connecting, which is the whole point of the whole conference. So we're going to have some reflections around where to go next to truly scale these types of collaborations. So I'm going to start with Pujita because you've seen life on the side of the FDA, you've seen life on the side of industry, but you have never forgotten about how important it is to incorporate the voice of the patient. So can you share some reflections around where we really need to take these collaborations to maximize that voice?
Thank you so much, Klaus. And thank you, CPAP, for having me join this final session. It's been very insightful, and we've had rich discussions throughout the past 3 days overall. And I'd like to begin by first acknowledging the crucial role that CPAP and these types of public-private partnerships play in the overall ecosystem, right? We're hearing that, PPPs are so important to bring stakeholders together in this, but as equal partners to develop strategies, solutions, other resources, and to really think through solutions that address these unmet needs that we have in advanced science and development. So as I reflect on the past few days and in this sort of regulatory roundup, I want to focus on sort of these 4 areas, and this will not cover the gamut of all of the other rich conversations that we've had, and some of the opportunities around sort of strategic and holistic integration of innovation, opportunities in patient-focused drug development and thinking around novel endpoints and biomarkers, and then finally around robust data foundation and the data sharing that we've been covering across the 3 days. So we're seeing great transformations in overall medical product development through the strategic integration of innovative approaches and methodologies. We have AI, digital health technologies. We're talking about real-world evidence, patient-focused drug development and patient experience data, and the list goes on. And these are all being strategically incorporated into the medical product development life cycle. And these approaches really allow industry to ensure that our development programs are efficient, clinical endpoints and clinical trials are meaningful to patients, and the evidence that's collected from these programs are systematically then incorporated into various regulatory, payer, and other decision makers' decision making. And there are some significant regulatory efforts as well to advance these areas. We have guidances and other initiatives. But at the end of the day, what we're slowly, I think, recognizing is this growing need to apply lessons learned across these various regulatory considerations, across these various approaches. We are thinking about these in very much in these silos. I notice when we talk about, we have AI conferences, we have patient-focused drug development conferences, we very much siloed. So we need to adopt a holistic approach to innovation that considers the entire drug development ecosystem and not just think about innovation in these specific silos. And in the first panel, I believe on the first day, we had FDA speak about this as well, about really think about the totality of evidence and the approaches and its applicability, and be able to identify those gaps and how public-private partnerships and other like CPAP can help convene that and have those conversations. Now, PFDD, as Klaus mentioned, is very dear and true to me. I've been working in the PFDD space for many years, since 2012. And so throughout the conference, obviously, this has been a strong theme about hearing the importance of the patient voice and how it is important in the overall medical product life cycle, not just the endpoints, and the need for us to really understand what matters most to patients. I just want to highlight that at Sanofi, we specifically talk about, we don't say patient-focused drug development or patient centricity, because I feel like everyone's focused on patients at the end of the day, but we actually call it patient-informed development overall to ensure and highlight the fact that patients are informing and we are partnering with the patients across the whole development life cycle at the various stages. And at the end of the day, patients and caregivers are the experts in what it's like to live with the condition. And this PFDD philosophy is really reshaping the industry and regulatory paradigm overall. And with the application of these various methodological guidances that Michelle and others spoke about the other day, we are being able to collect and strategically incorporate the patient experience data and the patient voice into our thinking. And we're also learning that in these cases where diseases may be biologically similar, patient priorities and experiences can really differ significantly across the disease stages or across the various age groups. So for example, pediatric population may prioritize development outcomes, while seniors may value more independence and quality of life. So this creates an opportunity for us to consider tailored or what we're calling personalized endpoints to reflect the age-specific and disease-specific needs that are out there. Because what we often see is that these standardized endpoints are typically expected to be the same for the whole target population, but that can fail to capture what then is truly valuable to the patients themselves. Just really quickly now, talking about novel endpoints and biomarkers, we've heard a lot over the course of the conference, how this is important to industry, how it's important to regulators. They're encouraging early discussions. A place where I see an opportunity to further advance this, especially when it comes to biomarker development, is really establishing these clear data requirements and validation frameworks. We heard this yesterday about this development of a blueprint that we need to focus on from early development, which also includes all the regulatory considerations and whatnot. And what is that actually going to look like? Enhancing transparency and communication, fostering that sort of collaboration overall. And at the end of the day, finally, the foundation for all of this is the data that we have, right? The value depends entirely on the quality of the data, foundation, and ultimately sharing of that data. So without proper data generation, data validation, and data validation evaluation, even the most sophisticated tools that we use, like AI or other tools, can carry significant risk. So to be able to fully leverage innovation in medical product development, we need to invest in data generation, quality assurance, validation, and data sharing, not as an option, but really a fundamental necessity overall. And really by adopting this holistic approach to data and innovation, with patients informing all of these various aspects across and breaking these silos, I truly believe that we can ensure that our advancements in medical product development can truly benefit patients across life stages, ultimately improving health outcomes. So thank you.
Fantastic summary, very insightful, Pujita. You captured a lot of the going themes, but also with a vision of how to make them happen. Ralf, if we want to make all of that happen, we need to expand our horizon of actors, and we also need to focus on change management. So comment on those.
Klaus, thank you very much. And we at the European Medicines Agency really love, I rarely use that word, working with CPAF. You do regulatory science. This is innovation or inventions being valorized, innovations being further taken further and making impact. We love working with you because you do this in continuity now for 2 decades, for 20 years. Many projects have for 3, 4, 5 years, but the continuity allows you to show us all your ability and competencies and identifying the topics, packaging them, bringing the people together, and having a really authentic multi-stakeholder approach. I need to mention that because that is absolutely the necessity already, but the aspect of scaling perhaps is not to say that there's any problem with that. It's fantastic. And the scaling perhaps is important if you think of the impact that we want to make with these solutions. So CPath create results. Data, yes, sure, but results from the data. That is the point that we are interested in. And in order to make impact with that, we realize increasingly often that many of the projects don't have a sufficient approach to change management. So using the results, taking them forward, implementing them in the healthcare system, whether you want to call it the learning healthcare system, that's an old concept that still resonates with many colleagues. We see that without an additional idea to have the broader researcher community so that they can be part of that change that needs to be made in practice, we don't achieve the maximum benefit for the patients and the healthcare system. So on that note, we would also like to support the scaling one way or the other. It's not an expectation that CPath can do all this on its own, on their own. So there is another element of partnering and supporting, etc. But it really is leading further to perhaps even professional qualification as a regulatory science, a group of people who are continuous partners in that. But the change management as such, and I mentioned it now for the last time, is the concept of understanding the environment sufficiently to have regulatory environmental intelligence that allows the project and the results to see what does it take to implement the results for continuous reaping continuously the benefits. So I think that is really our interest at the moment. Topics are there, and we will always come up with new. The depth is increasing. You're not shying away of complex topics, as in the previous session we just heard. So it's fantastic if that could be taken forward, and would be happy to support and be part of the journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralf. We're committed, and we'll demonstrate that commitment through action. Hide, we also have a commitment to make sure that the youngest ages of life are paid attention to, because they may sometimes not even have a voice of their own.
Exactly.
And I want to make sure that you also share the perspectives that you've heard for how to scale this to make sure that we maximize the impact that these solutions can have, not just for the classic approach of developing something in adults and then putting them in a pediatric population, but starting with the pediatric populations with the diseases that matter to them, but also with diseases that need to be intervened if we're really going to make a difference at a very early stage of life for the benefit that is going to be seen years or decades later. Floor is yours.
Well, I've been involved in this Inc. From the first meeting. So this is like a 10th, I think.
Yes.
And last year I could only attend part of the CPAS conference, and I didn't really understand why suddenly there's a mixture with different adult diseases. And this year I've been here from like Inc. Day and host these 3 days, and started to understand that we can learn a lot from like other diseases like Parkinson, Alzheimer, and the discussion today about from the rare disease patient representatives is great, and we can learn a lot. So we don't have to recreate wheels, but we can learn from other diseases, and we can incorporate that in pediatrics and neonatology. And I think that's a good idea. Now I understand why you did that, Klaus.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I think we have to do this more. And hopefully we can have more neonatology people stay for the whole session, convince them that it's important. And that's one thing. And may I comment about this, like from like a Japanese standpoint, or international? There are a lot of rare diseases, like 7,000 and more, and there's people mentioned that like more than 10,000 genetic mutations. I'm told that in oncology, pediatric oncology, there's a RACE Act, and now drug development is being accelerated. In Japan, we are currently writing up a recommendation to PMD and MHLW, and I'm discussing with pediatric oncologists and adult neurologists how we can proceed, like facilitate drug development in Japan. Obviously, pediatric oncology drugs are more improved, and there's a international consortium called Accelerate, I'm told. And I'm told that they are even discussing which drug should be studied first, because there are different drugs in the same class. And I'm wondering how we can do something similar for all the rare diseases, because like sometimes mechanistic wise, one drug may be available to that, may be effective to other diseases as well. And there are already people looking at that. And we have to really talk to each other, different specialists, and see how we can maximize and facilitate drug development in different rare diseases. We have to take care of all these rare diseases fairly. Well, so, there'll be some rare diseases not really taken care of. So, and I think that's very important. So, and CPAS is a very good platform to discuss about it.
Fantastic, Hide. And I want to say again, give you and PMDA and our colleagues in Japan a lot of credit for the way you created the snowball effect for the sharing of electronic health records from the neonatal intensive care units. That deserves to be highlighted again and again and again, because you were the ones who gave us the street cred to go to the other centers and say, Japan did this, why can't you? So thank you for that. Now, Amy, so you lead the hub and you focus on the continuous evolution of policy. So how do you see these collaborations also helping shape policy and also having the policy shape the collaborations in a two-way street?
Thank you. Big question, right? First off, thanks to Critical Path for having me here. As I'm sure you've heard before, I do need to say the opinions I give are mine, not necessarily those of the Food and Drug Administration. The hub, just to make sure all of you understand this in context, is a new program that was established by the FDA just about a year ago now. And I think, and I'll explain this, but I think the theme connecting the dots encompasses the value with which the hub was established in terms of incorporating the entire rare disease community through conversation and engagement to ensure we're doing everything we can for the rare disease community to advance therapies as soon as possible. Going through that, I want to put the hub in context. FDA actually, before the hub, so I guess 19, had 18 rare disease programs, including those funded funded by the FDA, but through Critical Path. That's a wealth of riches and a lot of programs, and most of them were established since 2019. But all of them were Critical Path and then primarily, not exclusively, single center within FDA and had very defined missions. That's wonderful. But we were starting to see some confusion in certain populations. Which program do I go? Is there redundancies? Are there gaps? And also through all those programs, some concerns were being raised from external parties, whether it's drug developers or patient and disease organizations, academics. How are we with all of these programs and the vast majority, the number of reviews that FDA is conducting every year, concerns about consistency across the centers, And also, if you think about it, the way drug developers, because of the very rigorous Food Drug Cosmetic Act, which is great, their conversations with FDA were usually product specific. But there's a lot of insightful thinking in the drug development and specific patient and disease organization that can be very insightful to help FDA move forward in this century. So the idea of the hub was launched. It is a cross-center drug center and biologic center program that from the very beginning brought in the voices of the whole rare disease community. It launched a big public meeting. There were over 3,000 people there in October of last year and got feedback on what were the top priorities for the hub to focus on. In that context, the FDA also opened a Federal Register docket and received actually approximately 65 very insightful, detailed, thoughtful letters about future policy directions, many of which focused on the issue of, didn't use these words, connecting the dots. One of the real values that we have at the hub from the beginning has been and is engaging in two-way conversations with external stakeholders on issues affecting the rare disease community. So I won't go in great detail, but I could because I really find it very interesting. The goals for the hub and what we've done and our goals for 2025. But I will tell you the three main priorities for the hub since our launch, and we're still growing and getting established, is advancing the science, of course, and then an internal goal of ensuring that we're connecting the dots within the FDA. Ensuring consistency between CDER and CBER. The hub also has a steering committee, which I liken to a board of directors that has representatives from the rest of the medical aspects of the FDA. And we also have a goal this year that is education and what educational materials are out there. And again, where are there gaps, where are there redundancies. For each of these three main goals, bringing in the voices from external parties and ensuring that everyone has a say and that we're doing what we can to learn from each other is key. I'll give you a couple of examples. One of the hub's activities is RISE workshops, Rare Disease Innovation, Science, and Exploration, which we had our first one just last week, September 3rd, on control options, focusing on internal and external controls. Real priority to make sure that we heard that it isn't focused on one disease, but rather on common issues in multiple diseases, and that we really heard from all external stakeholders, as well as those in FDA, on the issues we were discussing. In that context, for RISE workshops, we opened up a Federal Register docket. FDA loves Federal Register dockets. We opened up a Federal Register docket to receive ideas and proposals for future RISE workshops. It's a wonderful way to communicate with the FDA on different ideas you have. I encourage all of you to go in and look at those. They're very innovative and novel thinking in terms of looking forward to the future. Our next RISE workshop has been announced. It will be November 20th, and the issue for that will be individualized medicine. And I encourage all of you to mark your calendars. The RISE workshop we had last week had over 2,000 registrants. So these are clearly key issues. And so the RISE workshops, as I said, really intend to involve all stakeholders. Last week, I'll skip that for a minute. Another goal that we have is internal, as I said, consistency and communication within FDA. That also is a connecting the dots goal. We have created a council that that encourages both the biological center and the drug center to really come together at a leadership and reviewer team level when there's common issues. Is it struggling with a particular endpoint? Is it applications to both centers for the same disease? And really make sure everyone at the FDA is benefiting from what is institutional knowledge within the agency. In that context, one of the issues that we heard at the launch meeting of the hub a year ago, as well as the letters we received, is concern, as I already mentioned, consistency between the two centers, but also everyone's favorite phrase, utilization of regulatory flexibility, and some concerns about not whether FDA can, particularly in very small rare disease populations, utilize the authority it has for flexibility, but will it? Now, I will tell you that there's a strong belief within FDA that when warranted, FDA does. But this is part of what the hub is there for. But if drug developers don't believe that or don't feel they have the assurance, it's kind of, if the tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, right? I mean, it's not getting across. So last week, through the commissioner's office, we announced the rare disease evidence principles, which I hope you've seen if you've not looked for it, which were under certain eligibility criteria, but primarily for very small rare disease populations. If only one adequate, well-controlled investigation is feasible, this policy, if you will, program assures, if you are within the RDEP process, if you will, it assures you that certain mechanistic data will be considered. Again, this doesn't give new authority or doesn't change the regulatory flexibility that FDA has, but it gives the assurance that it will. Has been very well received so far, but it's a great example of where sometimes the connecting the dots is not something new, but giving more clarity to something that already exists. I also want to give a shout out to my colleague, Peter Barton-Hutt, for bringing up the special protocol assessment process, because in my first few months at FDA, when I was talking to some drug developers, why isn't SPA used more? I don't understand. And I did get some interesting answers. A couple of times I got SPA what? But also regulatory flexibility goes both ways. And that there's interest drug developers have in making sure they're not locked in. A meeting of the minds is a meeting of the minds. And it does mean both parties move forward with an agreement of some kind. And so you may each lose a little flexibility in the future. So you have to think about what is it that you value, and that's important going forward. So I'm going to close by saying what every other person from the FDA here, I'm sure, has said in the last 3 days. All of these go to the thing that I think should be on a button for all FDA employees. Come early and often. Talk to the FDA. I will say there's so much enthusiasm and of course my focus is rare disease, for focus on rare disease right now and doing everything we can within the regulatory standard of safety, legislative safety and efficacy, and ensuring that job number one. But the earlier you come, the more you talk about what are the options, the more you work with them on what is feasible. And let's face it, with a lot of populations, what isn't feasible, they will work with you. So I encourage all of you to stay in touch with the hub. And again, for FDA, come early and often.
Yes, thank you. The principles, the RISE meetings, and that's a fantastic dot connecting statement right there. And of course, we'll be there November 20th, as you know. But the important thing before I open it up for the last round of questions is that we've heard the message loud and clear. We need to expand. If we're going to scale this, we need to expand the horizon of stakeholders and actors that we need to bring. We need to focus a lot more on the entire modernization of the evidence generation enterprise. That's key. So the ideas are forming in our collective minds for how next year's workshop and conference needs to be structured. So I'm excited about that, but this is not about the meetings. It's about the work. the more important thing is that what the insights that we gain here inform the work that we will go out and do over the next year so that we can come back and have even more meaningful conversations. So thank you for all those perspectives. Tina.
Good afternoon. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, Amy. I'm Tina Morrison. I'm a former FDA. I worked in scientific computing. I was in CDRH on the QuantMed Center of Excellence for CEDAR, also serving the FDA chief scientist. I was there for almost 17 years. Actually, Susan Winkler from the Reagan-Udall Foundation yesterday mentioned this really interesting report that we did. So for many years in the world of modeling and simulation and computing approaches, we were always faced with this, like the regulatory barrier. And it turns out as we dug deeper, it wasn't actually the regulator barrier. It was the regulatory folks inside companies. So I'm sharing this with you because it resonates with the comment you just made. And so when we gathered a team of 40 industry experts under the Reagan-Udall Foundation, those folks came together to craft a message for their internal companies to say, look, the regulators are doing all of these things. It's you guys who are chicken and don't want to play. And so we tried to take the perspectives of industry to craft a message for their own leadership on in silico approaches, for example. So I just offer that as an opportunity to think about how do you bring the stakeholders together and focus on not the regulatory perspective from the regulators, but maybe bringing, you know, the regulatory affairs folks and those regulatory strategists to say, look, there is the opportunity to have that conversation. It's not just the regulators. So thanks.
If I can, thank you. If we had put degrees after my name, you'd see a JD. So I hear this a lot, that it's not, that it's the lawyers too. No question. Something that I often say when I'm out speaking is there's a lot of lore out there, and particularly in well, it's really not, in all drug developing and patient and disease organizations. Be very careful about assuming one of two things. One is that the answer you got for a particular fill in the blank 5 years ago is the same answer you get now. The science has evolved at lightning speed. Take advantage of it. And also FDA's understanding of innovations evolves. So go back and ask. Again, the theme of all this, but also be very, very careful about honestly what you hear about the no or yes and why FDA gave that answer. Because as with everything else in life, if someone tells you they're giving you a summary or their perspective, you really have to go to FDA now with solid science and good ideas and have a new conversation. If we're ever going to have a new day, we can't live off the stories from a decade or two ago and then still evolve at the same time. It doesn't work that way.
Tina.
Anecdotally, the same is true on, you know, these quantitative approaches, right? One company says, oh, FDA didn't accept my quantitative approach. And what we can't know on the outside is, well, did they accept your very rigorous validated study with all the right evidence and they still said no? Or did you not actually prepare the right submission and didn't give the appropriate information? Like, so, you know, hearing those stories, people say, oh, well, you know, they're really not playing the game with us. They're not willing to be flexible. It's like, but are you actually doing the rigorous work you need to do? And we don't know because we don't see what's inside those submissions. So yeah, I hear that. Yeah.
Something that I didn't mention, but some of you may have heard about, the commissioner is, it's very important to him to show as much transparency in some of the drug decisions that we're making. So you may have seen a round of complete response letters being made public for the reason of disclosing what we can about why decisions are being made, which gets to your point. This is all too complex to be just a yes or no answer, and that tells the whole story. It doesn't.
Ralf.
I think the discussion is really fantastic. And I believe one other aspect that I didn't include, but that links, I think, back to the topic and what was said is that connecting the dots is the ambition that I understand CPATH has. And you reminded us this is several organizations' ambition. In the European Union, we also have the life science strategy. We have soon the 10th framework program with a completely revamped approach to funding. And I think one of the ambitions there is clearly also what you could transcribe into connecting the dots. We also see already now new project types that use more biologically based mechanism of action, revived and revamped for neurological diseases across the ages. We have projects that are looking into pediatric medicine development, not just in oncology, pediatric oncology, where I grew up, but also in other areas, with the idea to connect experiences in therapeutic areas with other therapeutic areas. And it is important also to connect the researchers in these areas because they haven't necessarily spoken with each other. It's the pediatric adult divide that I think we have overcome largely, but not yet between other therapeutic disciplines. And so I think it's a joint effort to make the collaboration work across diseases and life stages, as you said, new stakeholders, and these are research leaders. The traditional funding paradigm is still that these have published in the area and their specific disease and their life stage of interest, let's say. But I think we need to really make it a review policy, and so funding a grant and maybe an article policy review as well, that the bigger pictures need to be understood. Research necessarily has to have a focus on the question and provide an answer, or at least a learning. But the aspect that you're putting out here goes way deeper, because if only CPATH would connect the dots, then how do the other connect theirs as well? It's really a new type of strategy that is not easily to articulate, but it is certainly almost leading to new ideas of how we can better serve patients through resetting certain approaches. We heard about interception yesterday, for example. We may have had different words for that in the past, but with this new concept, or with this concept, we can attach new approaches of research. We can revisit experience, and I think there is a great opening at that. But I do think that, as I suggested, the researcher community have inertia, and we need to find a way to influence these through workshops, as you have said, through public-facing activities, through showing interest and exploring what can be done together.
Fantastic. Hide.
Yeah. To write up the recommendation, I visited EMA January last year, and actually FDA this January, just before the presidency changed. And I found out that there are so many divisions and offices related to pediatrics and rare diseases. And just like you mentioned, they are now functioning like mesh, trying to get rid of silos. And I'm so impressed. So I brought back that information back to Japan and discussed with PMDA folks. And now, PMDA opened the office here last year. And also they have a new, Pediatric and Orphan Drugs Consultation Center last year. And now they're trying to get rid of the silo in PMDA as well. So there are pediatricians in different divisions try to regularly talk to each other and trying to get rid of the silo. And I think, learning from you, PMDA is changing, and the current CEO, Yasuhiro Fujiwara, was really keen to make pediatric and rare disease better. So I think PMDA can also kind of harmonize with the FDA and the EMA.
Yes, encouraged, and we know that you can make it happen. Thank you. Pujita, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, well, perfect. Because I was going to say, CPATH, you have a lot to think about, Klaus. Right. And I just want to, some of the things that folks brought up earlier and throughout the conferences, the thinking around fit for purpose, partnerships, really thinking about and not just, let's build on our successes. I think Sumati had mentioned that yesterday at the end of the day. It was like, or the first day, it's that it's really important to be able to build on the successes, not forget what we've achieved so far, but then let's build on that. How do we grow? How do we, make things more scalable? Thinking about overall change management and really target those areas, keeping this holistic mindset and really bringing and connecting the dots overall. So a lot of work, but I know, Klaus, you can do it.
Well, we can do it. This is all about the sea of collaboration. Okay. I think with that, we can thank everyone. This has been extremely valuable for us at CPATH. I hope this was very valuable to you as well, because the whole point is about traversing the road together. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next year. Yes.